It's a rare occasion that I genuinely get excited about a new product. Today, I'm in Wilmslow, Cheshire, where we're going to be going through everything you need to know about the new SigEnergy SigenStor. I'm so excited for this one. Let's go. SigEnergy, not SigEnergy, I've had it confirmed by the manufacturer. It's in fact a 5-in-1 system, working from the top down. We have an energy controller. This is effectively a hybrid inverter, but it's got a little bit of a difference to it, which is the energy management system. Now, units like GivEnergy, for example, have just brought out an energy management system for their AC coupled, but it's a separate box. This is all built in. So if I ever wanted to upgrade and add another energy controller inverter, I can just connect them together and they can effectively talk to each other. Energy management system enabling communication. The next thing that's there is the individual battery modules with their own battery management system and again their own safety features, which I'll come on to a little bit later, which are very different from other manufacturers. Here we've got three. We have two of the 8 kWh battery modules, and the one at the bottom looks like a battery module but it's actually a blank, just so that we could show you what a floor mounted kit would effectively look like. So we effectively have here 16 kWh worth of battery storage in a really small space. You can then get DC chargers, V2X. So this is where you can get a car, providing it's compatible and can communicate with the SigEnergy. I know they're constantly bringing out cars and compatibilities, but effectively where you can get the energy in your car and use that to power your home. Or you can use your car to be able to supply the grid during peak times and essentially operate this bi-directional charging capability. Really is in its early days, but it's very clever. If you have enough battery modules, you can charge your car up to 25 kilowatts an hour. It's huge. Your average charger is 7 kilowatts. So if you kind of had a meeting in the morning, need to have a really fast charge at home and don't want to pay a premium, you could do a rapid charge on your car and then go back out again for your afternoon meeting. So I think one of the things that's become more important as time goes on, people are seeing these as almost like an extension to their house. It used to be accepted that they were kind of ugly looking pieces of kit that we used to kind of hide out the way, but now they've become a little bit more of a statement piece. At the end of the day, you're spending so much money on them, why wouldn't you want it to look great? Look, you can't see any cables. We've hidden them all because they have a compartment down the left-hand side. People want them to go inside or outside. In this scenario, it's inside. Absolutely fine. Or it can go outside, like the installation we're going to show you later on in this video. It can go outside without any canopy. With the GivEnergy kit, for example, that we installed, they require this rain canopy that goes over the top, and I think when people look at aesthetically, they kind of put up with it rather than going, oh, that looks nice. And I think that's one of the big key details with this. Not them slating GivEnergy, I've got a lot of time for them, but I think when you're comparing, it is a bit nicer. You've got this status LED, we can change that, and it's actually got an LED at the side. You can turn these lights off within the app, where you can kind of cycle them, you can leave them on, you can do a pulse. Some of it's a bit gimmicky, but some of it's actually quite cool. And you get a status light, so you can work out whether you're charging. So like here's pulsing, so we know we're in a state of charge. If we have a DC EV charger, that one would light up as well. Now it's charging because we have solar on our roof. You can actually install these as an inverter by themselves with just battery storage. You can install them as an energy controller by themselves with just solar. So at a later date, you can add battery storage. You could add just one battery module, or each controller can have up to 6 battery modules, and you can have multiple controllers on site. The good thing about it being modular, and this is where SigEnergy have really thought about it, is if I need more performance at a later date, I don't need to throw my equipment in the bin. I can just buy the part that needs upgrading. So I can just get my energy controller and put a bigger one in if I need to, because let's face it, circumstances change. So let's have a look at the different options that we would have available. So this is a single phase model, and this is available anywhere from 3 kilowatts to 12 kilowatts, and they have a few denominations between. So depending on the size of my solar array and or my demand, say I have a heat pump, I'm going to want a bigger inverter. If I'm just an average family household that wants to turn a few appliances on at the same time, I might put, say, a 6 kilowatt energy controller in. The point is, if I started with the 6 and needed a 12 at a later date, I can either add another 12 to one side and add another stack of batteries, or I can just upgrade the inverter at the top. And this is where it gets even smarter, because the single phase and 3 phase are interchangeable. So let's say I started out with a single phase supply in my home. At a later date, I then start buying couple of EVs, a heat pump, for example. I'm in a position where I can simply take this single-phase inverter and swap it out with a 3-phase version whilst retaining the same battery packs. And now talking of battery packs, we've essentially got a few different sizes. We have a 5 kWh version that's being phased out for a new 6 kWh version, and we've got the 8 kWh versions that are here that's being phased out slowly for the brand new 10 kWh versions. The one thing on the 10 kWh versions is they're actually a 9 kWh battery. It's kind of done for a marketing purpose. So just a little side note on that really, because I found that a little bit confusing personally. But nevertheless, oh, and these are interchangeable with each other as well. So you can put a 5 with an 8, or you could put a 6 with a 10, and you can mix match them. Each energy controller can have up to 6 battery modules. If you want the bi-directional EV charger, that does take up 1 module. So in that scenario, you could have 5 batteries and 1 bi-directional EV car charging module. Talking of EV car charging modules, we have a few options with that as well. We have a 12 kilowatt version and a 25 kilowatt version. So that's 25 kilowatts worth of charge. So my EV could fill up in like 2 hours, providing you had the facilities to obviously charge it that quick with enough batteries. And they come with lead lengths from 5 to 10 meters. You just want to be careful where you put the energy control and battery, because it's fed from here. You have to be within 10 meters of your inverter or battery. If you're not, then you might just want to stick with the SigEnergy 7 kilowatt AC charger, which they make as well. So the DC charging module, as well as it being bi-directional, so V2X, so vehicle to home, so it literally takes power out your vehicle and can put it into your home, or V2G, which is vehicle to the grid, it also just does standard charging as well. So you could set it on your cheap night rate and power can come in from the grid and it can effectively go into your car, or effectively it can go straight from your solar panels direct to DC. So effectively it's a slight bit more efficient. The only downside to those is it's a very early adopter technology. They're brilliant by the way they're put together, but they're quite expensive. So a basic one starts at about 2.5 grand. You kind of start creeping up there if you want the 25 kilowatt version. So if you do want it, it's just a bit expensive for what it is, in my opinion, at this stage, but I can really see the potential. They're striking out well ahead of the field of everybody else and what they're doing. So the SigEnergy can be fitted without a gateway, or it can be fitted with. What is a gateway? What does it do? It effectively offers whole house backup, but with a bit of a difference. You can actually go completely off grid, as in completely, as in you never need a grid connection in the first place. You can integrate diesel generators, bi-directional EV charging to be able to keep you off grid. If your battery, say for example, went down to 10%, the DO port, which is the port that's in the gateway, can communicate with your generator, fire it up for you, battery stacks charge, generator goes off again, and you effectively can stay off grid in perpetuity. So with Powerwall 3, we can only back up a single phase. With SigEnergy, we can do both single phase and we can do 3-phase house backup as well. You can also back up a slightly larger load. If you go for the 12 kilowatt energy controller, you get a slightly larger backup. And talking of changeover, Powerwall takes a few milliseconds, very quick. Flicker of the light at most, whereas SigEnergy have gone one step further than that with a 0 millisecond latency. So what that means is the timer on the clock stays the same on your oven. Your security system, the CCTV system, doesn't reset itself. The alarm for your house alarm doesn't go off. It's absolutely seamless. It's still classed as EPS, emergency power supply, rather than UPS, uninterruptible power supply. It doesn't quite meet some of the threshold tests for UPS, but it's even better than Powerwall. And Powerwall is absolutely outstanding already. So I know the majority of people watching our channel are usually domestic homeowners. However, we also do a lot of work for businesses and commercial outfits, or people that just have slightly larger footprint homes that have 3-phase connections. So the SigEnergy energy controller inverter goes from 5 kilowatts to 30 kilowatts worth of charge and discharge speed. You can then link multiple of these together in parallel so they can talk and communicate and discharge and charge at the same time. The home gateway, you can have a 3-phase version and you can put multiple inverters on the same system. Same with the single phase, we can get 5 of them Or again, if you're in that transition period, you can start with a single phase, and the battery modules are the same as on the single phase as they are on the 3-phase. It's a great commercial product too, which is why it kind of meets all these objectives that we're trying to achieve as engineers. So with the different energy controller sizes, they actually upgrade a few of the other parts as well. What normally happens with inverter sizes is you kind of give it either 2 maximum power point trackers or 3 maximum power point trackers. Sometimes you don't need them and you're buying them for no reason, and then other times you don't have enough of them, and you're kind of then using Optimisers, which is another video that's coming out on the channel if you like and subscribe. You often need those parts alongside it. You might be thinking, what's a PowerPoint tracker? Effectively, this is the number of strings of solar arrays that we can put in. However, with SigEnergy, on the 3 kilowatt version, you get 2 PowerPoint trackers, but as we go up to like the 8 kilowatt range, we get 3 PowerPoint trackers, and then on the 10 and 12, we get 4 PowerPoint trackers. So if I've got different angles on my roof, I can just remove my requirement for like complicated optimizers and complicated systems. The voltage range on these inverters is really low, so it can fire up at 100 volts. What that basically means is with as little as 3 panels on one array. So I just save on a load of complicated components on my roof. But if I need complicated components, optimizers, and I need to add those on, I can do those on a panel by panel basis, because built within the SigEnergy app is an interface with Tego, which is an optimizer brand. I can effectively put a couple of optimizers on the panels I really need them on, rather than needing to kit the whole kit out and laying out loads of extra cost. They've really thought about it, which is quite unique to SigEnergy. And it's also really easy to use in the app. It's got AI built into it, and I know AI is a bit of a buzzword, and there's manufacturers talking about AI that's not really AI. But effectively, the SigEnergy system, if you want it to, can make all these decisions for you. It works very similar to your Powerwall 3, except you get a couple of other different benefits and features. Weather forecasting, work out how much solar you're going to generate on the day ahead. When and how much energy to buy if you've got an off-peak tariff. So optimizing between solar energy, off-peak, and any export rate that you can get as well. It links in not with all smart tariffs, so this is where GivEnergy gets a slight foot up, but it'll be a matter of time before it does. But it links with the majority of smart and intelligent tariff systems alongside it as well. There are certain ones on the Octopus API that it doesn't quite yet, but the regular updates you get on this app are just the same as you get with the Powerwall 3. It really competes on a very good scale. You get loads of other data within your app as well. You can go on a very granular basis and break it down. On other apps, they kind of really restrict you. They almost treat you as a little child and only give you a couple of bits of information. Some people quite like that. Some people want to set the app up and just leave it to it. And you can do that. But if you're like me and you like a bit more information and you kind of want to see what the voltage is, you can go into the subsettings. There's a few things that you can do as an end user to go, I want to run a health check on my battery. And you can go in and see what the voltage is like and what your temperature is like. So if you were kind of worried because it was a bit warm, rather than needing to call someone, you can just have a quick check yourself. And I really like it for that reason. Because it's got AI built in, you can also ask the AI a question. So you could say, how much charge state have I got in my battery? And it will deliver the answer. So rather than always needing to find the individual menu that goes behind it, you can just ask the AI assistant. Another key point is the remote access that we have as engineers. And as I mentioned before, you obviously get modular capability, so you can see what each battery management system's doing, what's happening behind the scenes, what temperature each unit's at, but we can access this and a few more things as engineers as well. If there was an issue, we can investigate this remotely. And briefly coming on to warranties, the tech support's pretty awesome from what we've seen so far. They do it very similar to the way that Tesla does it, and Tesla does it really well. It's like a call, you get the tech support. If an item needs replacing, it can be replaced, and we get paid as engineers to be able to swap these parts out, so it's not very painful for us either, which is what I quite like about the setup. I think one of the concerns is with any new brand, they're going, what about the aftercare? How are they dealing with that? So most inverter and battery manufacturers are designed by engineers almost for engineers. They're selling them to us. Effectively, they're dead complicated, they've got all these technical bells and whistles, but actually for end users that makes no sense. Whereas what SigEnergy have done, have started with the consumer in mind. So what they've said is, well, what does a consumer need? If there's a problem, they need it dealing with very quickly. And they've built the unit that way as well, so it's modular. So if we have a problem with one section of it, the rest of it carries on working. In terms of where data's stored, it's stored over in Europe, so it's not actually taken back to China, which I know will be a concern for some consumers of the kit. Effectively, it's a ring fence for that data protection aspect of things. So now let's talk about the tech that goes into the actual battery safety features. So a set of guidance that came out for installers was PAS 63100. If you're a regular YouTube watcher, you might have seen me refer to this previously. And this is essentially a set of guidance for installers on where to install battery storage. Getting ahead of those going from almost being recommendations to being regulations, which I think will happen in the fullness of time. SigEnergy have really considered that within their battery storage system. So what they've essentially done is a series of safety points. There's a die-cast body shell, so essentially a big metal shell that sits around the actual battery storage as well. First major line of defense. In between each one of the battery cells is like a gel that sits between them that stops thermal runaway. There's not just one temperature sensor or two temperature sensors, there's 7 in each piece of battery storage. If it notices the temperature rise, it can start to take some action via the battery management system. What it also then has is a pressure release valve. So if we start to go into the thermal runaway process, which it's never actually happened in all of SigEnergy's history, but hypothetically speaking, it's got past all these safety measures, there's a pressure release valve on the side. The idea is to take the pressure out of the battery. And then as a last line of defense, it even has an extinguisher in there as well, essentially just to stop it all dead in its tracks. They're ridiculously safe. If we have one of the battery modules that goes down, the energy controller, another battery module, will continue to work because they're all independent, they're all modular. One of the things that's built in as standard to these inverters is DC surge protection and AC surge protection. In terms of temperature, they can go down to -20. When the battery system starts to get below 0 degrees, they have heat pads, very similar to where your Powerwall 3 works, and effectively it can preheat the battery modules as it needs to. So essentially cycles current, heats the battery modules ready for use. So effectively you go down to -20 and store the kit outside. So it's all very well me talking about this in our comfortable office here in Wilmslow, but a customer's very kindly let us go and film at his house, so I can give you a bit more of a deep dive in a real life installation. And I'm going to talk you through some of the installation considerations, grid applications, and some of the thought process that went through the client's brain when choosing SigEnergy. Let's go. So you've joined me on site here in Wilmslow, Cheshire, where we've just installed this 7.13 kilowatt solar array, and we've coupled that with an 8 kilowatt controller. This is put across 3 separate strings. So we have some solar panels on a flat roof, we've got some on this orientation facing this way, and then we've got some, I think, east facing as well. Coupled alongside the 8 kilowatt controller inverter, we essentially have 2 8 kilowatt hour modules. Something really interesting to note about these is they're all the same size. So regardless of whether you buy the 5 kilowatt hour battery, 8 kilowatt hour battery, 6 kilowatt hour battery, or 10 kilowatt hour batteries, a few in the range, they're all exactly the same surface area, so they're interchangeable effectively. We chose the 8 kilowatt inverter because that couples really nicely with the solar array, so it can maximise the amount of generation, and it linked in well with the G99 application. One thing to note about these SigEnergy inverters, as I mentioned earlier on, they come in a range of 3 to 12 kilowatts in a single phase version, is that if we picked a larger inverter like we've got in this scenario, 8 kilowatts, which is on the bigger side, when we put the application into the DNO, which is called a G99 application, if they essentially restrict what you can export out to the grid, you're in a position where, because these are G100 compliant, effectively, we can generate the energy locally on your roof, store it in the battery storage, use it in the home, and if the grid need a restriction in any way, so throttling the generation down at any point in time, you can set that up. What that means is we can pick a bigger inverter with more battery storage without having to kind of reduce the size of the system that we've got installed. One of the things you'll notice with this installation versus the office, when we have 2 battery modules on this, we can do them wall hung. When we go more than 2 modules, they have to be a floor mounted kit because of the weight of them. This client wanted this because it's neat, tidy, it's sat out the way, we can pop it to one side. Now, if the client decided at a later stage, I could really do with a bit more battery storage. Can't imagine that's going to be the case here. Then all we do is we can take the wall mounted bracket off, we can put a floor mounted system, and then we just refit the inverter. It's actually very straightforward. Furthermore, if at a later stage the client went, I want to make the most of V2X, vehicle to home, or vehicle to grid bi-directional charging capabilities, which the SigEnergy kit is capable of with one of their DC EV modules, effectively, because it's so close to his drive, we can add another module and you can make the most of it. Now, you'll see it in the office earlier on, you couldn't see any cables, and it's the same with this here. All the cables are hidden down the left-hand side here within the enclosure, so we can bring them out low down, part way through, and then they essentially clip up on the inside and go into the side of the inverter. It looks so much slicker versus those more traditional inverter battery storage models. In terms of ventilation with an inverter like this, you'll see there's plenty of space left around. Realistically speaking, we want a couple of 100mm to the sides, top, to be able to allow the inverter to be able to dissipate any heat. On the larger models, so your 10 and 12 kilowatt single phase and some of the larger 3-phase models, they actually have a couple of fans that are sat outside the back. So in the event that they start getting warm, because ultimately they're working a lot harder, they'll just naturally ventilate. Now, in terms of physical noise that these create, not a great deal. They're very quiet. No more than a fridge is what I would say. So now let me give you a scenario. We've got a 6 kilowatt controller inverter fitted, but your energy consumption is going to change. You've decided, I want to take the next step to being green and renewable. We've got now a heat pump, multiple EV cars. We need more capacity, a 3-phase connection. What we do in that scenario is you can retain the same battery storage, and all we do is take off the controller, fit a 3-phase controller, and away you go. We don't have to waste these products anymore that you've spent so much money purchasing. We can just upgrade as time goes on, as things change. The good thing about SigEnergy is they make the new battery modules intercompatible with the previous ones. Where we've got other manufacturers like Powerwall 3 that's not intercompatible with Powerwall 2, effectively, if you want to upgrade it, you have no choice but to buy the new one. Whereas SigEnergy is saying, just buy the new part that you need. If you've got more consumption, if you need to make it bigger, just buy a bigger part. You don't need to rip the whole thing out and start again. Like most home owners, there's always a comparison process, a comparison of different products. Now, as you probably already know from watching our content, we do GivEnergy, we now do SigEnergy, and we do Powerwall 3. Well, in this scenario, Powerwall 3 was a bit overkill. It was more expensive. And essentially, the client liked the idea of, we wanted a little bit more than 13.5 kilowatt hours of battery storage, but didn't really fancy the expense of a DC expansion pack. So whilst in an ideal world he said, I'd love one of those, he didn't really want to part with the capital outlay of what that looked like and cost. We then on the GivEnergy range, because their low voltage hybrid only went up to 5 kilowatts and didn't really like, because of the space we've got, the high voltage stackable was too big and too clunky to sit outside here. So that's where we went with SigEnergy, because of its modular capability, the fact that he can have 16 kilowatt hours worth of battery storage and could expand in the future. Loved the idea of DC bi-directional charging, but maybe in the future, and the ability to be able to upgrade the controller at a later date if it's needed, but we could essentially be a bit more specific with the inverter size that we needed. It was matched perfectly to the array, it's just a little bit bigger than it, and we can make the most of the charge and discharge capabilities of the battery storage. You kind of just hit the nail on the head, which is why we went for this, and it's a beauty. This kind of suits the average buyer to the higher performance end. It starts out at like a couple that's coming up for retirement, for example, that uses 3,000–4,000 kilowatt hours a year, all the way up to commercial buildings, big 3-phase inverters where we parallel them together. Whenever it comes to a new product, I always get nervous about kind of displaying it or showing it, but I have been absolutely blown away by what SigEnergy have done to this industry. They've upped the game. They've got the other manufacturers scrambling around to try and create comparative products. It's really impressive. If you want to find out more about this product, we're going to be showing it a lot more on our channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, include any comments if you have any. I'd really love to hear what your thoughts are if you've already got one of these installed, or if you're thinking of having one of these installed. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch today.